Hello everybody, BL here, hoping that you're doing well, working on your puzzle one piece at a time. I have specifically refrained from speaking on the current health crisis, if you will, just because I wanted to collect my thoughts. I wanted to be careful in what I said and didn't say. And again, those of you who know me know I rarely give instructions as to what to do, but I want to give you information into how to govern yourself accordingly as it meets your particular needs. But some things I just need to, based on what I'm seeing, what I'm hearing, and talking with people, just want to put some things out there for you. First, let me ask this health crisis. Where are you getting your information from? Where did you learn about this particular virus? Where you get your information from, that source, is it reliable? Most of your information is coming from media, politicians, officials. Have they misled you before about anything? Have they misled you before about multiple things? So I don't know, I'm just one of those people. If someone has misled me intentionally in the past, I'm cautious about what I believe coming from them going forward. Now, of course, that doesn't mean just because someone said something and it turns out later that it wasn't true, doesn't mean they intentionally misled you. And it also doesn't mean just because they've said something that didn't pan out once or twice compared to 100 times that it did pan out, that they're misleading you. Everyone can be wrong. Everything is fluid. It continues to change. Things evolve, etc. So, use wisdom in that, but also be mindful. Where you're getting your information from, is it reliable? Are these not some of the same entities that gave you the various research studies, human research studies in various medical trials? Shall I name some? I don't need to. Many of you know. Also, let me ask you, did you know that there was a law, and I can't call it right now at the top of my head, but there was a law that prevented the media from giving you false information, from propagandizing you in order to influence you intentionally? That law was specifically not renewed. So media has been able to tell you whatever it is they want to tell you in order to influence your thoughts and your behavior in a certain direction. The law was intentionally not renewed. Keep that in mind. Therefore, the media is under no legal obligation to report truth or unskewed information. They are under no legal obligation because the law was intentionally not renewed. Shall I remind you that manipulators get people on board by telling a lie multiple times? Or they may tell the lie in different ways. They may use people in authority. They may use people with platforms, YouTube platforms, Vimeo, whatever the social media platforms are, to send out their lie. And you're taking it based on their alleged or supposed credibility. And they might have been credible up until this one time and they finally broke and they've been turned. Manipulators use them. And voila, it's been said so many times that suddenly it becomes fact. Not true. Bull. It's still a lie. It's a well-dressed lie. And no matter how well-dressed it is, it's still a lie. So keep that in mind. And I remember someone said to me one time, we were having conversation, and I was sharing some information with them, and they said to me, well, I'll believe it when someone in authority, well, this is not the way they worded it, but basically said they believe it when someone in authority tells them. And I was just in such disbelief, because you are so manipulated, and you, that particular person, but you, some of us, general population, so manipulated and so dependent upon information coming from sources which, truth be told, if you sat down and thought about it, you realize they've been feeding you bad information all along at various points to suit their needs. So why would you discount or ignore someone, your next door neighbor, or your school teacher, or someone who gives you some information, just because it doesn't go along with what media or authority is telling you? Media and authority have been lying to you since the start of media and authority. Let me ask you something. Who's overseeing the resolution to this virus issue? Not specific names, but entity. Have those entities proven themselves reliable in the past? Have those entities given you reason in the past not to believe what they say at face value? We know the answer to that, and we know they haven't. So why now do we take what they say at face value when they've given us multiple reasons in the past not to take their words at face value? They've given us multiple reasons to search on our own, discern for ourselves, to do more digging before we take a position with, or take an action one way or the other. But now all of a sudden, we got to hear what they say, and we're going lock, stock, and barrel based on what is said. No proof, no receipts, no evidence. But because they said it, and because they're on the news, or because they're on a certain TV channel, or they hold a particular office, what they said must be true. If y'all don't wake the heck up, wake up, wake up. Let me ask you something else. Do you personally know anyone with this virus? Another question. How do you know it's actually COVID-19? Do you even know what COVID-19 is, or are you going based on what you've been told? Have you read any of the science for yourself? Have you seen real death rates? How do you know they actually died from COVID-19? And regarding these death rates, if y'all remember, I said before, I don't know, that video may be suppressed right now, because a lot of my stuff, that I've done on other channels has been suppressed for whatever reason. But I told y'all before, data can be manipulated. Whoever is presenting the data can manipulate those stats to give the impression, or to give the outcome that they want the reader or the seer to get and to take and run with. So be careful with data. Be very careful with data. One thing people didn't always understand about me, but I tend to file stuff away, if you will. So as I'm going through life, day-to-day living, you interact with different people in the grocery store, at the dry cleaners, in the laundromat, at work, at the stoplight, wherever you are, and you're gaining information. So in all those interactions in the course of a day, ain't nobody know anybody with COVID-19 themselves. Oh, but it's mass, it's everywhere, And I just use COVID-19 for an example, but that's something I've been doing all my life. So you gain information from people and you just file it away. because at some point it's going to come back and be a benefit to you. It's a piece to a puzzle. We all have to live out many puzzles. It is a piece to a puzzle that you will have to put together for yourself at some point in the future. Hold on to the information that you're getting. Stick it, just put it in a mental file cabinet. Or if you need to take notes, write it down, write journals, and just write. Because at some point you may need to come back to it. AI. Do we know what that is? Do we know that it's adaptive? Do we know that adaptive means it gains information and modifies its responses based on the information that it gains? So, for example, those of you who may be in the IT field or one of those fields where now they're doing the testing with everybody. But the SAT tests, ACT, all of the IT certification tests have become adaptive. In that, when you go in to take the test, instead of getting one set test that everybody gets, you get a test that adapts to your level of knowledge. That means instead of having 50 questions that everybody takes, you may go in and because you have a higher level of knowledge, the test is going to be harder for you. It'll give you 4 or 5 questions. If you ace through those, boom, it's going to jump up several levels and give you much, much harder stuff. And it's going to stay there until you bomb out enough, and then it'll back down again to a lower level. That doesn't sound too fair to me, does it? But the point is to get you to understand that this stuff is adaptive. It's gaining information. And it's modifying its response based on the information it gains. So let's think back to this COVID-19. At one point, people would say, oh, black people not getting it, black folk can't get it. Suddenly, you got black folk getting it left and right all over the place. So we're told. You had the one actor, Idris, whatever his name is. He showed up on social media saying he was the first one. But have you noticed how many prominent people in the public eye are coming forth saying they got it, they tested positive. Think about that, people. At one point it was said only old folks with pre-existing condition, or only old folks was getting it. So now you got more young people. Supposedly one stat I saw earlier this morning said the ages between 20 and 39, it's a rash of people getting it left and right and and they're dying from it and all of this. Well, what happened to the ones with strong immune systems? Initially, strong immune systems, young, you're in no danger. You're okay. You get it, your body will fight it off. It was just the old folks or folks with pre-existing conditions that were getting it and at risk for death. Now suddenly it's everybody. Let me ask you this. You get hurt on your job, or you're not hurt on your job, you're in a car accident. And you're going to sue, you want your compensation, etc. Your health is going to come up. And trust and believe that the insurance company or whoever, you're going against the insurance company, they're going to dig down to the day you were born and every day you had a sniffle from the time you took your first breath until the day of the accident. And then they're going to say all of those times that you had a sniffle, all of them times that you needed a Tylenol for any kind of pain, those were all pre-existing conditions. And they are the cause of your current pain, really. Now, of course, there's some laws in place that, kind of try to mitigate that or whatever. But bottom line, your payout is going to be reduced because of that pre-existing condition. Your pain, your issue, whatever now is being attributed to the pre-existing. So somebody explain to me, why is it now with COVID-19 The pre-existing conditions fall nowhere into the equation, supposedly. Everybody's dying from COVID-19. Nobody's dying from a combination of or from the pre-existing condition itself. They're all dying from COVID-19. When you look at a death certificate or when the medical examiner is determining cause of death, I don't know if you all noticed, but there are multiple lines on the paperwork, on the death certificate. And it may say the person died of asphyxiation caused by asthma, secondary to pneumonia. You know, they'll give you multiple conditions, which means one or the other did not cause the death. It might mean, for example, an asthma attack. Let's say if the cause of death was asthma, the asthma attack, asphyxiation caused by asthma. So you had an asthma attack. The asthma attack itself may have taken that person out, but that person's respiratory system had already been compromised to the point close to death anyway. They may have already had pneumonia or some variation of, or yet to some degree. So was it the asthma attack itself that took them out, or was it the pneumonia and whatever else was going on with their respiratory weakness that actually took them out? Think about those things, and I may have worded that incorrectly, but you know where I'm trying to go with that. Just saying COVID-19 is killing people, if you've got all these pre-existing conditions, and let's just be real, every person living in the United States has some sort of pre-existing condition, some sort of pathogen, some sort of mycoplasma, some sort of bacteria, some sort of virus, some sort of bug in their body. We breathe this air every day. We eat the food. We drink the water. We all have pathogens in our body. They've been doing it for a long time. So, is it possible then that these pathogens just got stirred up, or it was the perfect scenario for something to be triggered? If y'all remember at one point, the Lysol can, they showed how on the back of a Lysol can it says takes care of coronavirus. And so people would not quarantine. They didn't stop their lives. They kept going forward. They went to work, they socialized, they interacted, etc. Suddenly we saw a rash. Suddenly coronavirus gets worse. You've got a rash of people dying left and right, the blink of an eye every time. And all these people are reported. My question is, who actually knows people who are actually dying from this? And do you know for sure it's that? Are you allowed to go to the hospital? Are you allowed to see the actual documentation? Are you allowed to see their medical records in detail? Or are you just going with what you're told? Be careful with listening to what you're told. I started this pod with that specifically. One day I may tell you some stories about what doctors have said and knew they were wrong. I've had to fight for my life. There are other people in my blood family that I've had to fight for their lives because doctors were telling us one thing, and if we went with what the doctors said, those people would be dead. Now, some of them later went on to pass. Some of them are still walking around here partying, having a good time right now because we didn't listen to just what the doctor said. We used common sense. We put two and two together. We went outside research, checked into other sources, and made our decisions accordingly. And there are people who are alive right now today because of those actions. So, but the point is, when people refuse to self-quarantine and stop all action and stop going to work and spend every single dime that they had rush buying and stuff, all of a sudden we got a whole rash of cases and these people are dying. We just put some stuff out there for you to think about. Some other things you might have missed along the way while everyone is focused on COVID-19 and very little else. Has anyone noticed how the symptoms have changed? They're evolving. It went from, something equivalent to a bad flu or whatever, or seasonal allergies or whatever the case may be. Let me correct that. It went from something other than to now that's what it is. The symptoms are pretty much very similar to a bad flu or seasonal allergy. But my question is, what about the timing? Are we in flu season still? Did this not kick off back in the fall, the flu season? And here we're now, we got pollen all over the cars. This is seasonal allergy time. So all these people that are being diagnosed, is it really COVID-19 or is it a regular flu? Or flu mixed with something, who knows? Or is it seasonal allergies? Sneezing was not on the list. Runny nose initially was not on the list. Now suddenly those things are on the list of symptoms. Did anyone, I'm sure y'all have noticed the feds are suddenly finding all this money to bail out this and bail out that and do this and do that. Didn't have any money for ADOS all this time. They suddenly finding a way to put the homeless, to get the homeless off the street and to get them into whatever these unused buildings are, to get them somewhere. Yet, all this time they had no resources to do anything for them. And ask yourself, why do they care about the homeless now? They didn't give a darn about them all these years. They were locking them up before. Or some cities, they couldn't be locked up, but they were allowed to just live on the streets or wherever it was they were living. In some cases, they made it illegal to feed the homeless people. You would be arrested and charged with a crime if you gave food to a homeless person. Yeah, some states did that. Or some jurisdictions. Now suddenly we got all this money, these resources to put these to get these people housed and get them off the street. But we didn't have it all along. At the same time, we got CEOs from many major companies suddenly stepping down. I mean, in large numbers, they're stepping down. And in some cases, some of these companies are threatening to fire large numbers of people unless they get money, unless they get a bailout from the government. I saw one where United Airlines had threatened to fire a whole bunch of people, just or whatever, and if they didn't get some money. And, my thoughts on that, well, you know what, let them go belly up. And let those employees, because the reality is the people are going to take a hit either way. They're always the last on the totem pole. So, let them collect their unemployment. And when we get to the other side of this, people pull your resources together, whomever you are, reignite an airline, buy up United's planes at dirt cheap costs, and restart up the airline. Or even if United restarts up the airline, they would take the hit as well. They'd have to go belly up and start all over again as well. You got people spending everything they have and little to no relief for them. More nickel and dime in them. One nickel and dime to draw out every single asset, every single piece of money they got. So what happens when we do that? We draw out every resource, every asset a person has. We position them not to be able to fight back. We take away their leverage to respond to situations or to respond to the actions that we may be planning to inflict upon them later. We position them to be totally dependent upon us. At our mercy when we do that. And y'all know I have a bad habit of saying we. And I got to work on that still. Have y'all noticed that the feds have not mandated a moratorium on foreclosures, evictions, utility shutoffs, etc.? Neither have most states and municipalities. Now, some have. Why hasn't the federal government issued a flat-out moratorium? There should be no evictions, no foreclosures, no utility shutoffs, repos, none of that during this time frame. If you're telling people don't work, you're telling people stay in the house, you're shutting businesses down, even to the point of military, National Guard in the street, making sure people are not out going about, trying to earn a living or whatever the case may be. But at the same time, we are not putting in those protections for those people. People who would be up and out and working and making their money to pay their little mortgage or pay their rent or light bill or whatever it is. But they're following your orders. And at the same time, they'd be in position to take another hit long term. These people will come homeless, then what? How difficult is it going to be for them to move on the other side of this? And now while I realize that the service is being used and it needs to be paid for example, if there's a moratorium on mortgage payments, well, for as long as this lasts, if it lasts 2 months or 4 months, if I can't go to work and pay my mortgage, then the bank should not be allowed to foreclose on my home. I should not be charging any extra interest, because remember, the banks got bailed out in 2008, and don't think they're not sitting here with their hands out now again. Didn't the Federal Reserve just lower the interest rate, as well as input? If you inject they loaned banks some money and they injected some more money into the economy to save it and all this other stuff. Banks are getting money to sustain. So when this is all said and done, when we get to the other side of it, if I owe 4 months of mortgage payments, I'm required to pay that. I use the service. I'm in the home, yes. But I shouldn't be expected to have that 4 months worth of payments as soon as this is over with. There should be a mandate that those 4 months of payments either be tacked to the end of the loan, somehow, divided over, the 8-month period or 12 months, whatever it is, double, triple time, the time it took me to amass that particular debt. Same thing with the light bill, the water bill. If you go 2 months from being able to pay your water bill during this time, my water shouldn't cut off. And when I am able to go back to work, I should be allowed at least double the amount of time to be able to pay it back. Because here I'm paying the current as well as a portion of the arrearage until it gets caught up. That just makes sense with everything. Everything. None of the people should be held accountable. Anybody that's under a certain income range, and I don't want to toss out a number, but if you're a regular working person, you're under a certain income range, none of what you have to forego during this time to survive, according to what the government is telling you to do, should be on you and you alone to have to fix and figure out. And even if this all went away tomorrow, you had to make some sacrifices. You had to reshift money. You probably bought extra groceries. You bought extra supplies. Who knows what you had to go buy to be able to sustain for 2 to 4 weeks, or whatever estimated time frame you were given. But on a side note, if y'all remember, one of President Trump's first responses was what? It's not that serious. Who knows? It'll get better soon. It could just disappear. It could all just go away. Think That's what I mean about taking information and storing it. Yeah, it caught my attention at the time. I don't know what it means. Okay, I'll just stick it in the file cabinet. It'll come up later. But as I'm putting these pieces together, that pops back up into the forefront of my mind. So again, what else you may have missed? How many laws are being passed locally as well as the federal level while everyone's focused on COVID? Might want to do some checking in your local area. Might want to do some checking at the federal level. Do the checking for yourself. Read for yourself. Laws are still being passed while everyone's sitting at home, I don't know, eating bonbons and watching reruns of something. Has anyone noticed that the measures that we're being pushed to take here in the U.S. seem to mirror those taken in other countries? The Real News Network YouTube channel, they've got a great video came out this morning. This virus is the shock, dictatorship is the doctrine. Excellent video. I suggest you go watch it before they take it down. When I first looked at it, it had 400 and something views. I went back again, and it suddenly dropped down to 300 and something views. So it's getting limited. I don't anticipate it staying up for too long. So go check it out. The Real News Network is the channel, and it's a video they put out this morning about the dictatorship. But yeah, measures that are being taken. Lockdowns, the shelter in place, quarantine, self-quarantine, etc. They're getting you to self-quarantine. They're using fear to get you to self-quarantine. So what are you doing? You're limiting your contact with people. And the less contact we have, we've already seen with the rise of technology and the less physical contact that people are having with each other, they're becoming uglier, they're becoming meaner, nastier. The bonds itself of humanness are breaking, and people are more likely to do evil and wickedness and nastiness and meanness to each other the more the bonds are broken. So this lockdown, this limiting contact, what effect do you think it's going to have in the long run? It's also limiting, it's limiting the spread of the virus that's supposedly airborne, or supposedly, if someone sneezes, you're going to catch it, whatever, and there's a presumptive positive. Well, will it also help with preventing people from gathering to get their thoughts together, to put the pieces of puzzles together, to maybe act or do something that the powers that be doesn't want them to do? Certain courts are closing. Not all courts, but certain courts are closing. Rights to assemble are being denied. In some places, folk can't even go to their house of worship. They're being asked for, or they're asking for the power or the right to track everyone's cell phones. And if you listen to somebody in Israel, I can't call his name, a spokesman for Israel, he basically said that they want the power. They were asking for, and they may have it by now, the power to digitally track every single cell phone, because it was going to help them track the infection. Then he cleaned it up and said it's going to help them track the people that are infected. Well, the authority to track every single cell phone is not the same as the authority to track the cell phone of those who've tested positive. It's not the same. And if you want those rights, it could be worded such that we want the authority to track their cell phones, or if they want to help, have them sign it or sign off on it. sign a waiver that says, yes, I give you permission to track my cell phone. Why must we infringe upon the rights of all the people and track their every single move, when truth be told is being done anyway? But this makes it legal. And once it becomes legal, once it becomes on paper, you don't get that right back, that right of privacy back. History repeats itself. Every right, every privacy, every constitutional right that's been taken away from the people in a time of crisis or emergency does not come back to the people. So I say to you, be careful what you sign away in this situation or in any emergency situation. Be careful what rights you give up. We saw that September 2001, what rights we gave up. And I say we, I wasn't necessarily a participant in it, but I say we collectively gave up because we believed what we were told. Come to find out, there was some more stuff going on behind the scenes we didn't know about. But in the meantime, the rights were already given up. Talk about testing. Governor of New York yesterday, I believe it was. The test is in testing now. So they've got a test that they think is going to work, and they're testing it out to make sure it's going to work. So if the test is being tested for its accuracy, how are all these other people being diagnosed? And supposedly some tests that they are using is only 20% accurate. So you got all these people with these, shall I say, false positives? Oh, or are they being diagnosed clinically? Oh, you got a sniffle, you got a fever, you've got this, oh, you got coronavirus. What's the criteria being used to determine? If they're working on the test now, and supposedly the test is only, it determines if you have the antibodies. So if you've got the antibodies, either you've had the disease and your strong immune system resolved it on its own, or you're still symptomatic right now and your immune system has not been able to dissolve it on its own. So there's no real treatment to give you other than to pretty much just comfort you. Some basic stuff, maybe some Tylenol or whatever to bring the fever down. But there's no treatment, so to speak. So what criteria is being used to diagnose these people? And I'll go personal here. Some years ago, I was diagnosed with arthritis. Went into the office, had some symptoms. Oh, it's arthritis. Okay. I just laughed. So I'm getting older than I was in my 30s at the time. Went back again. Said the same thing. Oh, it's arthritis, whatever, no big deal. So you telling me it's arthritis based on a clinical diagnosis, an in-person interview with the symptoms I'm giving you, and you've decided this is what it is. When I finally got to a rheumatologist, and I had to push it, finally I said no, because it just doesn't seem right. Got to a rheumatologist, and there was a blood test that tests your RA factor, your RA level. And there's a particular number. Once that number, according to them, once that number reaches a certain level or higher, then it's considered rheumatoid arthritis. If it's below that, it's not. And depending on where it is, you might be susceptible to it, or you might be developing it, or whatever the case may be. So, actually got the test done. Wasn't nowhere near no arthritis. But had I not been persistent, I would have went all along thinking, oh, I had arthritis. And it was something completely different. So I say that to say, are we clinically diagnosing these people with COVID-19 just because of symptoms they give in the office, which could very well be something else? My understanding is there's not enough tests to go around. Only certain people are getting tested. 1 minute, yes, anyone who wants to test can get the test. No, now you're only getting the test if you are symptomatic. Well, they only give you the test if you're symptomatic. If the test is only 20% accurate, yet the test is being tested now to determine if it is accurate, I'm willing to say these diagnoses might be false positives. Or chances are, if you take the test, depending on who you are, your results are going to be positive no matter what. Use your head, people, start thinking. And that New York governor, supposedly, as he put it, tests are being tested now to determine, if they're effective, etc., etc. He said there's going to be a looming wave to break in 14 days. I've heard this kind of talk before. In such and such a time, such and such is going to happen, such and such is going to happen. So you're preparing us for this. You're using fear to prepare us for it, to keep us locked in the house. But how can you be so sure? If this thing is evolving, if it's changing, if it's, the symptoms are changing each day, the numbers are changing, etc. 1 minute it's on the old folks and the ones with compromised immune systems, etc., underlying conditions. Then it's the young, healthy folk. Then it's this one, it's that one. How can you be so sure that you're going to get a large wave in 14 days? And then he gives us a number, I think 25,000, who tested positive in the state of New York. But I thought we didn't have that many tests. So again, what criteria is being used to determine that these people are positive? Another official, I can't call his name, this is what last week, said we are in a live exercise right now. That caught my attention. Why would he call this pandemic a live exercise? So is it an exercise that went live? Or is it an exercise that they intended to be live and it has another purpose? Put the pieces together, people. Put your pieces together and govern yourself accordingly. Some things you might want to search about. The flu. The CDC reporting of flu and the timelines. Check out this vaping illness that suddenly appeared, about 2 years ago. Check out the reporting on that. Check out the overlap between flu, vaping illness, and COVID-19. Ask yourself, was anybody testing with the COVID-19 pathogens in the last 5 to 10 years? While you're doing your searching, we're just giving you some things you might want to look at. Those that were doing the testing, did they meet all the requirements of a safe lab? Is it possible that something leaked? The lab may not have been safe. We got corporations leak stuff into the water all the time and dump, their can't call them, not their trash, but their excess from whatever it is they're making into the environment all the time. Is it possible that somebody was testing with this particular pathogen and the lab wasn't safe? They didn't take proper measures and the thing got loose. And I'm just putting it out there. I don't have any actual proof of it. But, if you did some searching, you might find a piece to a puzzle. I listened to President Trump often, more than once, saying that, he's a war president. This is a war. This is a war. It's not so much a war that you and I are used to. Like, boots on the ground and bombs being dropped, etc. But it's still a war. And you've got this guy, girl, whatever it is, Q, dropping all these drops or bits or whatever it is. They dropping all these pieces, something about a deep state, and cabal, and, they're going to be rounded up and prosecuted and broken up. And believe what you want to believe. I'm not saying right or wrong. I think there's valuable information to the puzzle that you have to put together in every source. Whether it's information that you can totally discard or information you need to include. But there is information everywhere. Just like a police officer doing an investigation. They talk to everybody. And they decide what information needs to be kept, what information needs to be put on the back burner, and what information needs to, they can just discard. Where we told this all started, we told it started in Wuhan, China. What was going on at the time? Hadn't there been a trade war going on? Wasn't the youth protesting over there at some point? Was they protesting all over the country? Until all of a sudden now we're on this lockdown all over the place. But protests were breaking out not the country, the world. Protests were breaking out all over the world. Media ain't gonna tell you all of that. That's what was going on before this hit. And now all of a sudden everyone has to go in the house. But here's another thought. China's a major producer and exporter worldwide. China's poised as the next United States, the next great superpower. This definitely impacts their economy. It definitely impacts their image. And if you wanted to spread something, wouldn't it make sense to put it in the infrastructure somewhere? So you put it in the economic infrastructure of the products. And send it out that way. Again, I'm not saying what's right or wrong, yay or nay. I'm just giving y'all some stuff to think about. It's a good way to spread something. And as I'm sitting here thinking, a side note, remember, U.S., we grow our chickens here. We ship them to China. This just started the last few years. I think maybe within the last 2 years or so. We grow the chickens here. We ship them to China for processing. And then they're shipped back to us to eat. And when I saw that, I asked myself, now what sense does that make? Why would we grow our food here, ship it all the way to the other side of the world for them to process it for us? And we know there's some issues with sanitation in their particular processing plants. We've seen it left and right. And then it's shipped back here for us to eat. Put your pieces together, people. Put your pieces together. Every now and then you see a snippet, someone saying, oh, it's a hoax, it's bogus, it's lies, da-da-da. And this is coming from other countries. This is not just coming from here in the U.S., us talking trash. You know how we get now. It's a lie, don't believe it, it's a conspiracy. And as I do that right now, I'm sitting here remembering. All of a sudden last year we had this rash of the chicken sandwiches. People killing folk over chicken sandwiches. Now keep in mind, there are those who are going to take advantage. Besides the politicals, besides the corporations, you got folk out here stealing other folks' groceries. I saw a meme with a little old lady in a store. She was hunched over her rollator, and the shelves were empty. And that just burned me up, actually. It made me hot. Because I'm sitting here, there was nobody to get groceries for her. She lives somewhere. I don't know if she has family or not. I don't even know how true it is. But the image of it in and of itself. Y'all, if you got folk who are elderly, who are disabled, who are in position where they can't get out and move about as they needed to have, please tell me you're thinking about them. So while you in that line buying, your canned beans and your toilet paper and whatever else you buy, pick up some for them. Even if 5 people on your block or in your building bought for that one person, that person would have enough that they need. But it just made me mad to sit there and see that old lady had made it to the store. By the time she made it there was nothing there left for her. Oh, I was hot about that. I'm just being honest with you. But I could see somebody even stealing her groceries if she tried to go to if she was able to get something and trying to load it in her car. I could see somebody hitting over her head stealing her groceries. Or if she was buying batteries or, flashlights or, whatever little basic emergency stuff that she felt she needed to get. But not just her, they're doing it to whomever they can, whoever allows themselves to be vulnerable. So in that regard, I say be smart. Diversify your stuff. I remember as a little girl when we used to go shopping during the holidays. We were always told don't put all your money in the same pocket. In case the pickpockets find one of your pockets, they won't get all your money. So we used to have to, we go out shopping, we maybe had $50, $100, whatever it was, we had a whole lot of money. But you put 10 in this pocket, 10 in that pocket, you hold 5 in your purse, you're different places, just to split it up. So in case the pickpockets got you, they didn't get it all. I'm going to shut this one down for now. It's gotten a little longer than I wanted it to get. I told y'all I tend to get long-winded. I've been holding myself on this. I'm going to come back with a part 2 to talk about the end game. Because I believe there is an end game. And we need to be looking at that. So, take care, be blessed, and see me on part 2.